Welcome to Expediting Change. Y'all know I love y'all and I love that y'all pull up on me at Expediting Change. We're going to have some fun today with S. Dot. Everybody call her Shay, but I call her S. Dot, and she allows me to call her S. Dot. But welcome back to Expediting Change. We're going to have some fun today. Now that you're rocking with Expediting Change, make sure that you pull up, share, tag, comment, post, do all that good stuff because you know what does not cost you any money for Expediting Change? To heart it on Instagram, to watch it on YouTube. So share, my people, and get Expediting Change out there because this is for the positive progression of the culture. Love y'all.
Why is it you really want to preach, boy? I want to teach more because I'm experienced.
Welcome. How you?
I'm well on purpose today, bro.
I heard that. I almost said welcome, bro.
You know how we do.
Before we just jump into it,
yes,
because I know you.
Yes.
But we got to make sure people know you.
Okay.
So, man, talk about yourself. Who are you? What your name is?
Yes, what my name is. Yes. Interestingly enough, and what I am most excited about is the season of who I am. So if you follow me on socials, I am your favorite lifelong learner and self-awareness coach, Shay. But I am Shaneiree, Shay, right? I am the founder and CEO of a business. I'm a mompreneur.
Yeah.
I'm a friend. I'm a sister. I'm a researcher. I'm a lifelong learner. And my story is that I'm from the hood.
Yeah.
I'm from the ghetto. I'm from Harlem. And I got out of that, rose through the concrete.
For sure.
And found myself at Buffalo State.
For sure.
And there's where I found family and grounding.
Yeah.
And full circle moment, I sit here with my brother.
Full circle moment, man. When you talk about the people, the one thing that I was having a conversation with some young people about is college or career ready, right? And college doesn't necessarily mean leave high school, go to college, get that degree, go to work. There are literally lifelong friendships that I have because of going to college, which have nothing to do with me having a 1.98 GPA at one point and almost getting kicked out of school. You feel me? But bro, we 20 years deep.
20 years deep.
20 years deep. And now it's called Buffalo State University.
Buffalo State University, as I was, going through and preparing for this conversation with my brother, one of the very first videos that came up is our connected professor, Dr. Haynes.
My God.
And shout out to Dr. Haynes. He is a mentor to me and someone who got me to change my major after taking one class because he was able to break it down in such a way that it made sense and I needed, not wanted, I needed to learn more.
For sure.
Because I felt like Buffalo State was me living the principles of Kwanzaa,
let's go.
which is what I learned in Harlem.
Yeah.
I came up in the ghetto, but I had dope influence.
That's right.
So Dr. Haynes and Gail Wells, our blessed ancestor, were the people who showed me how to live the principles and connect economics and community. And it never left me. And, as again, preparing to have this dialogue for his interview to be the first to come up. It's all about energy.
Typically say that. We used to say that's crazy, but that's not crazy.
It's never crazy.
That's meant to be.
Meant to be.
That's meant to be. That speaks life.
That speaks life. It speaks life and it speaks to the importance of remaining connected.
For sure.
And how energy for me reminds us who we need to remain connected to.
Let's talk about that. You said economics and community, and I also believe economics and culture is similar to economics and community. What does that mean for you?
Ashe. For me, the importance of understanding how money can work for you is not a conversation that most people in our community are ready to have, right? And that could be from a generational perspective. I'm not ready to have it because my parents never
Absolutely
had it with me.
Absolutely.
And so I'm going to pass that down to the children that come from me, that same way of thinking. And from my perspective and what I gained from the community at Buffalo State in those professors is there is another way of thinking about that.
Yeah.
And Dr. Haynes did that for me in one class. And coming out of Buffalo State's an economics and finance major, I wanted and needed to learn more to be effective in my community.
Absolutely.
And so that translated to my life after Buff State.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can learn economics. You can get rich. You can be a multi-millionaire or billionaire and be a good steward of your community.
Ashe, and be from the hood.
And be from the hood. and no knock to anybody.
And no knock to anybody. I
don't have to be a rapper.
Nope.
Or a ball player or an actor. You feel me? Like there are other ways to make money and be okay and comfortable in your skin.
Ashe.
I was having a conversation, and again, don't play this, don't send this to your favorite rapper or your favorite movie star. You know what I mean? That is good too, but there are other paths to success and financial wealth building. I was having a conversation with some folks, and I said, yo, do you find it funny or is it just me? And call me the angry black man if you choose to. I don't believe that I am. I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty joyful.
Always have been to me.
You know what I
pretty
mean?
real.
Exactly. Let's keep it a buck.
Keep it a buck.
Like I put on a suit, but I'm going to have my gold teeth with me.
Listen, all times.
But it feels like it's no coincidence that at this time and space that we're in right now, there are more millionaire and billionaire BIPOC, Black people, African Americans, minorities, whatever term you want to use, building at the height of the wealth that we are generating. However, there is this undercurrent, which is no longer even an undercurrent now, maybe it's a tidal wave of tax the rich, eat the rich, rich people are bad people. I am not a conspiracy theorist, as you know, by any stretch of the imagination. However, I do find things a little funny. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, this is a time when it is the opportunity to earn as much wealth as we possibly can. And then, as you said, use that to break generational curses.
Yeah, it goes back to my earlier point of generational mindset and the thinking around that. Right. And so, I sit in between. I'm not even going to say, and I'm not even going to say, but I sit in between where it's important for me to understand my children and their way of thinking and be open to that, but also live in my morals and my grounding.
No doubt.
And so because I intersect that thinking, I'm a lifelong learner.
No doubt.
It's always going to be evolving for
No doubt.
me. And what you see is that not happening.
For sure.
You see, I've got the money.
Yeah.
That's rich for me.
For sure.
There is no conversation around wealth.
Yeah.
And that is different than being rich.
No doubt.
And so when you think about community, how do you interject or insect some of those discussions around finance and wealth? It's self-awareness. Let's call a spade a spade.
Absolutely.
I'm not aware that I'm doing this.
Absolutely.
And if I'm not aware that I'm doing this, who do I have in my circle that can say, hey, bro, you're not doing this enough?
Yeah.
Studies and research will tell you that leaders in some of the most highest positions are self-aware.
For sure.
Whether it's taught
Yeah.
or whether they just came that way.
For sure.
Those are the people who are able to influence
Yeah.
inside of their organizations and within their communities. So if people took the time to first look inward and say, what else could I be doing in my community with the wealth that I'm building?
That's right.
Because what goes out comes back in.
Absolutely.
And if you took that insight to when you're building wealth, it's a different conversation.
Man, Shay, I it's so, how long, Khalif gonna kick us out at some point, but man, listen, shout out to Studio 12. Listen, man, I got so many points I want to tease out of that. First, let me just rattle some stuff off real quick. Because first off, we both got so excited, we didn't even talk about your background.
Ashe.
Second, you just said that wealth and rich are different, so we need to talk about that. And then this EI, this self-awareness, that man in the mirror. We need to talk about, bruh. Sis.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start. Let's get a people, Shay, as a lifelong learner, but mompreneur, and let's talk about your resume a little bit. Let's
Yeah.
let you shine,
Yeah.
queen.
The awareness is that, we hate doing that, right? We hate bragging about ourselves, but it's necessary for people in our culture to know what it is that we
For
do,
sure.
so that they connect and resonate with that background.
That's right.
So, again, many people know me as Shaneiree, and I go by Shaneiree, and I want to get into a little bit about why that happened,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not going to shout her out, but a cousin of mine, I was probably my second year at Buff State. It was back
Mhm.
home in Brooklyn, in the hood, and in the key food in the hood. And it was this African woman who was standing in front of me, and she kept saying Shaneiree.
Mm.
And I was probably about 22, that this older woman is not talking to me.
Mhm.
Um, and she continued to say it. I had on a top that showed my tattoo. And at some point, she touched me. She
Mm.
tapped me on my shoulder.
I'm gonna get your attention.
Yeah. And I turned around and I said, yes.
Like,
And my cousin was like,
uh
well,
oh.
you tap me in the hood. What's
Right.
going
What's up, boo?
on? And she goes, Shaneiree. And she points to my tattoo. And I was like, oh no, my name is Shaneiree.
Mm.
And she looked at me and said, no, it's not.
Mm.
It's
Rename on the spot.
It's Shaneiree,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the 22-year-old version of me was looking at this elder, and I knew that I had to respect my elders.
Absolutely.
But how dare she tell me
What my name
what
is.
my name is?
Facts.
And then she said, where we are from,
Mm.
that name is royalty, and it's
Let's go.
pronounced Shaneiree,
Mm.
and it means dark beauty.
Mm.
And I turned to my cousin, her jaw was on the floor, and I could visually go back to what this woman was wearing.
Yeah.
And you jokingly said to my cousin, from this day forward, I'm going to forever go by Shaneiree.
Yeah.
I now know the meaning. But that brought up conversations in my family about where my name actually came from.
No doubt.
And it came from an aunt who had at that point was an ancestor for a very long time, and no one else in my family could explain it.
Mm.
So this for me felt like a foundation, and being from the hood and a first generation graduate of everything
Yeah.
in my family,
Yeah.
this was an identity that I felt I was able to walk out of Buff State and cultivate.
For sure.
Right? Because I now had a meaning,
Purpose.
a purpose.
That's absolutely.
And there was not just a purpose for my name, there were all these stories that my uncles would tell me about how my grandmother prophesized over
Yeah.
what I would be
Absolutely.
and who I would be to the
Absolutely.
family. So I felt like I had this elder tell me this
Yeah.
for a reason,
Love.
and walked out of Buff State with Shaneiree.
Mm-hmm.
And full circle moment, tonight actually, I'm doing an African ancestry reveal for my family of who I am and who we are.
That's
and
dope.
where we come from.
That's dope.
And where we come from, the colors mirror what that woman was wearing in that market.
Fire.
So
Paying deference. Full circle.
full circle moment.
Full
So
circle.
I am a coach that practices not just what I coach for my clients, but I live self-awareness every day.
No doubt.
And I help organizations dig deep with the people that work within their organizations to do the same,
For sure.
to create wealth for that organization, by first creating wealth in its people. And that's who I am.
Oh, you just added a whole lot more for me to dig into, which is good because we're on a podcast, so we're here to talk. The purpose and the knowing who you are. I often say that if the same personality or archetype that I currently am was a white dude, I would never ever get called arrogant. but my family drilled in me, you are Shomari James. And that means intelligent warrior who uses reason. Warrior and reason. So we about this life, but we also gonna think about some things.
Mm-hmm.
And that drove purpose in me. Man, I
Mm-hmm.
popped out on a skateboard, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
with a gold chain right in the birthing room like this.
Yeah.
So that is powerful. And I think to add to that, individuals learning about self, because you hear BIPOC, you hear black, you hear minority, but black is Afro indigenous from so many different places.
Gotcha.
And you need to know that. You need to understand that you are not your skin color.
Yes.
You are a creation of where you come from or where your ancestors come from.
Mm-hmm.
And that has fundamentally given me such perspective to guide me in my life. So I absolutely love that. I want to take it to how did you and how do you recommend individuals get to that place of self-awareness? Because we can talk about it today, Shay, and I'm only talk about me. I ain't gonna never call nobody else out. It's been hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 40 plus,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I'm 20 plus. I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Self-aware. I'm aware that you need to get away from me. You know what I'm saying? So, what are some of those key recommendations to have that introspective look
Yeah.
into yourself?
Yeah. Good points. First, recognizing that it's hard.
Mm,
Um, and it's okay for it to be hard because anything worth working through is meant to come with you learning something from it.
mm,
And so, the person who you were 20 years ago, the people who are still supposed to be around you are
mm.
because they saw your energy. They didn't see it as arrogance. They saw it as an opportunity to learn from someone who was that rooted
No doubt.
in who they
For
are.
sure.
Right. And so the first part is understanding the awareness that, look, it's hard. It's going to be hard for me to be more self-aware.
Mhm.
And to align yourself and trust people who give you the feedback when you're not doing it
No
right.
doubt.
That those two things, it doesn't matter what models tell you, what the research tells you, those top two things, if you don't have that understanding of my way of thinking is not the only way of thinking in the world,
No doubt.
and I trust this person to tell me when I'm not thinking or I'm off with
Yeah.
the way that I respond.
Yeah.
If you don't have those top two,
Yeah.
you won't be able to identify your triggers.
Absolutely.
You won't be able to learn from the moments that you have.
Absolutely.
And you become a 40 plus year version of yourself who doesn't have perspective on how you've learned from that.
Absolutely.
And when you learn from that, you do things like Equity Now Inc.
That's right. Appreciate it.
You go back
Appreciate it.
into the community and you not just teach the importance of what it means to be financially free, you create lifelong learners of breaking the cycle
For sure.
of thinking that they can't be wealthy.
Love. Oh my God. You are spitting and you said understanding as opposed to understanding. You
Yes.
know, I'm listening. Come
Yes.
on, Shay.
I'm a coach. I'm
Come
a
on,
coach.
Shay. And I'm gonna say, as a personal tool of what I did for that introspection at a level of maturity, or it took a level of maturity for me to understand, I said, hey, who do I trust in the moments? One of my things is I have a temper, and a temper never goes away.
Right.
You just get mature enough to handle it. But who do I trust in the moments that when I get upset are able to calm me down?
Mhm.
Because when you try to find those individuals around you that you trust to be transparent and vulnerable, you don't necessarily know. But if someone can calm you down when you're angry, that's an accountability partner.
Ashe. I coached someone who was a manager within an organization, and we had like a symbol
Mm-hmm.
because in the moment it wasn't. You can't talk someone down
For sure.
when they're in that space
For
of
sure.
having that type of opinion,
For sure.
but you can add a reminder,
Mm.
and sometimes that's visual
Mm-hmm.
of accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I encouraged him to find someone else on his team who was a manager who they would have for each other in a meeting
For sure.
when she saw he was getting to a point where his point
Mm-hmm.
was not going to be taken. Because
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing about it. Your point could be missed by the way that you react in a moment. And
That's
that's
right.
an understanding
That's right.
awareness as well.
Absolutely.
So having someone you trust, say you're losing the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You're losing the point of what you are trying to connect with the people here.
Yeah.
I need to reel you back in. And that's not
Absolutely.
going to happen with words.
Absolutely.
And so he and this person found a way to communicate in meetings without communicating with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great, when he came back and shared what that was, it was like, I'm glad that happened. And now he's, the, vice president in the organization, and
So
he uses that as a tool for himself.
absolutely, because oftentimes you can lose the message that you're intending to give based off how it's coming across. And it's a old saying that is so redundant and people get sick of it, but it's so true that it's not always what you say, but how you say it.
Ashe.
And that's big. And it took me, it took me a very long time
Yeah.
to understand that. I have a coach who I will shout out, Harvey. He does a trigger program. And his trigger program is identification of the trauma that you face based off what your personal trigger is. So when he took me through his program, what I found out or what I knew but didn't know how to tie it back to my trigger is that I'm what's called a knowing. So when I miss information or you keep information from me, it's an almost an instant escalation.
Mhm.
So the people around me who are my accountability partners have a part and a role to play in it, not to tell me everything,
Right.
but to know that if I pipe up because I didn't know is Shamari, this is why this happened. Let's have this conversation.
Mhm.
But it's also on me to then be able to recognize that I am piping up because of that trigger of me knowing.
Yeah.
But again, it's so difficult to be able to recognize it. And I know you want to talk about emotional intelligence. It takes a high level
Yeah.
of EI to be, especially, I'm going to speak to the black men. Actually, I'm going to speak to black people. I'm a black man, so I said I'm going to speak to black men, but I'm going to speak to black people. When we say it's the principle, we use the principle as an excuse to allow our temper to take over. It's the principle. He played me.
Yeah.
She played me.
Mhm.
I gotta go in. And I was having a conversation with somebody about what does that mean?
Yeah.
And then I gave them my advice. And then I said, I'm not too big to let you know that I even need to listen to some of my own advice.
Yeah.
But talk about that from an emotional intelligence and awareness perspective, and that it's the principle.
Yeah. It's the ego.
Mm,
It's wrapped into a nice bow and word the principle,
mhm.
right? Um, Part of it is recognizing that there are things about yourself and your triggers that you just won't know.
Mm,
Sometimes something could trigger you and it could be a new trigger for you
mhm.
and you not recognize it. And so that's why we have to be lifelong learners of
That's
ourselves
right.
because it does not matter what someone else does.
Mhm.
Emotional intelligence, the foundation is self awareness
That's right.
because that's the only thing you can control in any situation is yourself,
Self. That's right.
right? So that's one part of it, ego. The second part is recognizing that what someone else does has no effect or consequence on your life and the way that you live it.
Mm,
And the realization of that, what would it give you or what would you lose leaning into that trigger?
mm,
Frustration,
mm.
right? If he's crazy enough, a tussle, whatever.
Right.
You lose all of those things when you forget, hey, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So that's one part of it. And then it's that once you recognize that the people that you have around you are the people who love you enough to give you that, hey,
Yeah.
you're not acting. What's the self-awareness and reflection that you're doing to
For sure.
not repeat
Right.
that behavior?
Cycle of behavior.
Those are the foundations of self-awareness. You can look it up and there's amazing definitions.
Mm-hmm.
But what it boils down to is being able to not just be aware of how your emotions are reacting in a situation, but also synthesizing from someone else's perspective. Well, they could be having a bad day, and there's 10,000 things that they are coming to the table
For
with
sure.
that have nothing to do with me.
For sure.
Your brain synthesizing both of those things in the moment
For sure.
is hard.
Very difficult.
That's why you lifelong learn
That's right.
about being able to be a better version of yourself.
And one of the hardest things to actually conceptualize, and it's been said to me a few different ways by people who I love and trust, get over yourself.
Mhm.
And in getting over yourself and getting over your ego, they didn't do that to you. How you react to it
Right.
and how you interpret it
Right.
and how you ingest it
Right.
is you doing it to yourself.
Right.
Because people are going to be people and they have their own traumas, and it may have had an effect on you, your family, etc. But after that incident, whatever that incident and the principle that occurs, it's on you how you process that.
That's right.
And giving them power over you to think that they did this to you because they wanted to harm you, even if they had some intentions to harm you,
Right.
you got to move on. But that's a very, very, very mature and difficult process.
Mature and difficult, impossible.
Mm,
So that's the awareness piece.
mm,
We are aware that it takes a level of maturity that doesn't require us to move from here to here tomorrow,
mm,
just an inch.
mm,
Just change one behavior.
mm-hmm,
Just have someone around you able to help you work on one thing that you change about yourself.
mm-hmm,
And then keep repeating that
mm,
and keep repeating that. The self-discovery in self-awareness is the key to making sure that once you evolve, you practice
for sure,
what you've learned in that evolution.
for sure.
So if you've learned to give people grace, keep giving people grace.
For sure.
Right? There's also research that tells us that individuals react based upon what they are going through.
Yeah, that's right.
So you could be a trigger, something you did or said
That's right.
could be a trigger to that person.
And that's so hard oftentimes. Again, I'm not going to blame it on individuals. That's so hard sometimes for Shomari to look up and be like, all that I've done for a ninja, and now this is the case?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not about you.
It's not.
It's not about you.
It's not.
But then back to that ego piece, which makes it very difficult. I want to tie this in to get to the wealth piece, to that emotional intelligence, that level of self-awareness. And let's start from this perspective and then move it to the positive. If then you cannot, or you're having trouble with getting over, manifesting, having the realization of bringing in that level of maturity, how that impacts me, which then ultimately, because this is expediting change, to expedite this change because it ultimately impacts my bag. If I'm a knowing and I know that I have a temper and I'm not relaying my message clearly in a lucid fashion, and I'm on the other side of the table with somebody who could be a funder, I just lost that deal. Help me tie that in and wrap that up.
Well, I think part of it is being uncomfortable and being aware that self-awareness takes discomfort and being purposeful about being uncomfortable. And that's a hard place for people to be because there's comfort in chaos.
I'm gonna cut you off for a quick second. I used to say, I mostly stole it when I was at UPS. I did 10 years at United Parcel Service. And we used to say a phrase that was volume hides sin. So the more packages I have, because I have so many packages, it brings in so much money that it hides some of the things we're not doing well. So
Mm,
that shifted for me into people learn very well how to cloak in chaos. So
Ashe.
I love that you said that. My bad. I had
Ashe.
to get that out.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And the understanding that it's not your ministry to change every mind,
Mm,
and focus on the communities that you are able to impact.
hmm
I think with being a knowing, and I can relate to that to some degree for sure, but in being a knowing, you want to help because you see the possibilities.
For
You
sure.
see, you can absolutely see what it looks like. But one of the things that my mentor shared with me is the importance of knowing that your message will resonate with those who come.
Mm,
And when it resonates with those who come, they have an audience that you aren't in.
hmm
And so, if you want to be impactful in rooms where your name is said, how do you communicate with folks in spaces where they're in rooms where your name is going to now be said
That's right.
based on them?
That's right.
And so, for me, that's where it starts.
Let's shift these gears to that wealth piece. I
Ashe.
think I hit all of the pieces that I said I would come back to and hit.
Yes.
My short term memory is terrible. My long term memory is solid. My short term, but I got my sis here and I remember everything I want to hit. Everything I want to hit. We gonna definitely have to do a part two because there's so much you said, Shay. But this wealth piece, you made a clear distinction when talking about wealth versus money versus rich. Say more about that.
Yeah. I talked earlier about the generational mindset and what that thinking is around money,
Mm-hmm.
and the sometimes roadblock by generations who don't have the knowledge for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's so many, but for whatever reasons around finance, and they pass that fear down.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the recognition that my awareness around money
Mm-hmm.
is limited.
Mm.
Most people don't want to say that out loud,
Mm-hmm.
depending on their generation.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up in the hood, you would see the girls pushing their strollers
Mm-hmm.
into the welfare offices with the Gucci bags, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a clear misunderstanding about where you can put your money
Mm-hmm.
to become wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a mindset.
Absolutely.
And from the perspective of how do we help generations think about money differently, it's about our messaging,
For sure.
right? I have this conversation with my children all the time because they are in a generation that I am not in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for even as parents for us to learn how they think about money.
That's right.
And what they're being taught about money.
That's right.
And perhaps the way that we think about money has to be explained to them differently.
For sure.
So starting there, starting in your own wheelhouse, but being honest about your limitations.
That's right.
About the understanding that you have about money.
Absolutely.
So that's the first part. How do you get rich? Because in the 90s, that's what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
That was the messaging.
Mm-hmm.
You were rich if you had this
No doubt.
car. You were rich if you were able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You were rich if you dated the dude from the corner down the street
No
versus
doubt.
the dude from A. You know what I mean? All of these things fed into how you thought about rich.
Mm-hmm.
If you were fortunate to be in an environment where there were tons of diversity, the conversations were different.
For sure.
So in order for you to start to understand You have to be quiet in rooms where you don't know anything
And have to be comfortable
and be comfortable in that
being quiet and
silence.
being
I-
in that room.
One of the things I say to the people that I coach is smart people be quiet.
Mm,
And I encourage them to go in rooms that they would never think to go in on purpose
mm-hmm,
and be quiet.
mm-hmm,
And then go in a part of the room, in a part of even in the restroom, and reflect on what they've heard.
mm,
When you reflect on what you've heard, you then have to be curious about learning more.
absolutely.
So if you're not putting yourself in rooms where you're uncomfortable, being quiet,
Mm-hmm,
and reflecting,
mm-hmm,
you don't want to be self aware. And those are the
mm.
people that you aren't trying to tap into. You want to tap into the people that are curious
That's right.
about learning how to learn more about themselves.
I love it. An insatiable appetite to learn more. I say be more interested than you are trying to be interesting.
Ashe.
But once again, Shay, it is especially in this super fast-paced culture of social media for that to be the case with instant gratification, adding to it that the generations now barely even touch cash.
Mm-hmm.
So conceptually, I'm spending on my iPhone. I'm spending on my Google Wallet. I'm spending on my credit card. Days of old, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent, more wrong per se than right or indifferent,
Right.
right? This is grown folks' conversation and money don't grow on trees.
Mm-hmm.
However, here is $5. Go to the store, get me some bread. That bread's gonna cost $2.50. You better bring me $2.50 back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big difference now. So from that framing perspective, talk to me because you mentioned the 90s. Talk to me about then and now from a supportive perspective of what I need to do to continue to grow.
Yeah. That's a good follow-up question. What I see, I still see the foundational opportunities that were given to us
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to it still ties to being curious.
Mm-hmm.
What am I looking at online?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I learning from about money?
Mm-hmm.
Am I checking their resources to see where they are getting their information?
That's right.
It's still about the desire to be curious.
Yeah.
And so if you are one who has moved past the 90s where it was about Dr. Haynes talking to us about bread and milk in a classroom and breaking it down that
For
easily,
sure.
how do you translate that foundation online?
That's right.
Bite-sized micro learning.
No doubt. Love it.
That's what you do.
For sure.
You give those micro learning lessons that you don't reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
You capture the audience in the way and where they are now.
Mhm.
And if your audience is online,
Mm-hmm.
you be consistent in your messaging, be rooted in the fact that you are the subject matter expert in that,
Mm-hmm.
and add those micro learnings, and your audience and your community will come to you.
I agree. I totally agree. Help me really quick though with because somebody asked me this question. The overconsumption though. So how do I meter it? How do I not become saturated, prevent myself from becoming saturated as I'm trying to be still and be quiet and learn more because there's so much to learn
Mhm.
even when I'm checking the checker.
Yeah, you still be rude to yourself.
Mm,
If it requires break, you take break.
no doubt.
If it requires unplug, you unplug.
No doubt.
Your audience will follow you because they follow who you are.
Mm,
And if who you are is someone who takes a break, I'm not even going to shout him out, but there's this YouTuber who's
mm-hmm,
been on a break
mm-hmm,
for more than a year.
mm,
And people are like, when is he coming back? But if you
mm.
go back, people are still watching his old videos.
That's right.
They're still retaining information that he gave 4 years
No
ago.
doubt.
For whatever reason he's taking a break,
Yeah.
he still has his base,
No doubt.
and it's growing.
No doubt.
Why? Because people want to now know what has he been doing on his break,
No doubt.
right?
When you pop back out,
When
what's
you
good?
pop back out, let's go.
Yep.
But the goal is that you pop back out more reflective, more refreshed.
Mm,
You still have to protect your peace.
mm.
You still, in this day of social media, in this day where messaging is so rapid,
Yeah,
you still have to connect to your source and foundation of who's your
for
audience.
sure.
Don't go after and follow the, I'll quote Cat Williams, the skippers.
No doubt.
Don't follow the
For
skippers.
sure.
If you're trying to really be rooted in finding who you are, stay that way.
For sure.
And your audience will follow you whenever you come back.
Always. Listen, man, this is Expediting Change, and it's a conversation, but I'm still supposed to be the one interviewing. But I done got drawn all the way in, like we back in the towers, or
Yeah.
we sitting at Louis with a
Yes.
beef hot dog,
Yes.
kicking it. Shay, this is so much love, man, and I really feel, and I take away something from every single podcast every guest that comes on, but it almost feels like you like, Shomari, we haven't sat down like this in a long time.
should.
I'm gonna make sure I give you some nuggets
I
too when you
should.
get back in the car and go back to the fam. This is crazy. I am not closing right now, but I just had to say that because it's love, and what you should do is take this podcast, just like all of the Expediting Change podcasts, and rewind it, screenshot, snapshot, take notes, because Shay is absolutely spitting. What I do want to get into for this next piece, Shay, combining that difficulty of that self-awareness in this journey of wealth building, because we want to get to the bag to be able to open our accounts, fund our accounts, make investments, and then donate to our communities. But we don't necessarily have to go through the pitfalls. But if I don't be still and be quiet, then the other side to that coin for me not being able to support my community because I'm not mature enough yet is ... Talk to me.
Well, I keep saying it, but it's going back to your foundation and your base, right?
Mm-hmm.
People respect people that they resonate with. And if you are unable to be true to who you are in business, true to who you are in family and community,
Yeah.
the bag is going to come and it's going to leave as fast as it's come.
Ooh.
Right?
Say that again.
It's going to come and it's going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But if you create foundational nuggets rooted in who you are,
Yes.
around the way that you build wealth, the
Yeah.
way that you build wealth in your community, the way that you support your community, they will come.
Absolutely.
They will always come. And it's a mindset, fixed versus not.
For sure.
To recognize that.
That's right.
Because we operate in a we need it now. And let's be real, we do, right? We need the revenue to come in.
Yeah.
But if it's rooted in you being able to continue to be authentically you,
That's right.
the bag will come, and it will come in abundance that you won't believe.
Absolutely. Be authentically you. The very last question I have for you, because that was such a perfect way to end it, but you got to get the hot seat question, which is, what are you doing today, right now, for the positive progression of the culture to expedite change, Shay?
I'll say I'm starting with me, right? First and foremost, I'm starting with the way that I connect to money at home, and those lessons that I pass down to my children, and having open conversations about money, having those family meetings from young, because as a first generation graduate in everything, it's important to break the generational mindset around money.
For sure.
So I'm starting at home first.
No doubt.
And then I'm going out into the business communities and, communities where there are young people who want to elevate in business. And having them and reminding them that emotional intelligence is a part of the conversation for their growth of wealth. And inserting that and intersecting that with how you build wealth, because the resources are there. How you build wealth has nothing to do with how you keep it. And you have to understand that from a level that's higher than raising your revenue. So being out in communities where um, there is opportunity for me to speak about this topic on a grander scale
Mm-hmm.
and learn from it,
Mm-hmm.
learn from those communities as well. Um, and then, talking
Mm-hmm.
about it,
Mm-hmm.
because when folks are not self aware and they operate on the internet,
Yeah,
you want to be able to share a message that resonates for people to connect with it.
for sure.
And so being authentically who I am
For sure.
allows people to follow and find me in spaces where they want to learn more about
Absolutely.
themselves, not about me,
Absolutely.
but about themselves.
Absolutely. Shay's being so humble. Since Shay's not gonna shout it out, even though that was a phenomenal answer. She's one of the dopest coaches I know. She's one of the dopest training facilitators I know. She does amazing work with the Black MBAs. She also is cold in event planning. We did not have a fashion show unless Shay was putting it together. So I'm gonna shout her out in some of the areas that I know that she's dope in, that she's so humble she didn't even
Oh,
mention.
Shay.
But tell the camera, tell the audience, how can you be reached?
Yes, you can find me on my website, www.thedamesgroupllc.com. Shout out to Shamari for that logo. And you can find me also if you're interested in ways of living the principles all year around and having conversations around money and how to live the principles all year round. You can find me on www.bahayamaninabrand.com.
This has been Expediting Change. Y'all know I do a freestyle flow wrap up, and Shay said so much. And there was so much that resonated with me. But I think one of Shay's later points was the one that stuck with me the most as the umbrella of the crux of the point. And Shay talked about being authentically yourself and then building that brand around being authentically yourself. And in order to be your authentic self, you need to be self aware to know what it is that you are being authentic about. And that takes emotional intelligence, that takes being still, that takes being quiet, that takes being humble. And humility does not mean that you put yourself down. It just means that you know when to be quiet and listen and then when to pop out. This is Expediting Change. I encourage you to continue to listen to the podcast because we are for the positive progression of the culture. And every single guest that I bring on here, make sure that you tap into them because I fundamentally believe that a rising tide raises all ships and that we can all grow together to get this bag in this capitalistic society to take care of ourselves socially and emotionally.
Just me.
It's been love, Expediting Change. I
As
appreciate
I
y'all.
open my mind and try to reach yours, ask myself, why is it you really wanna preach, boy? I wanna teach more.